Okay, I think we're good to go. We're just about on time. I thank you all for coming out. We have a great panel here. I'm not going to belabor the length of time that we have here this evening by taking up by going through introductions. We'll get through that with each panel that we get through, and we're going separated in different subject matter areas to hear from each group individually, and if the groups can kind of coordinate amongst yourselves as we're talking here, and then we want to make sure we have some time to have some questions and answers with the audience and some discussion with the audience of issues that come up. Obviously, the issue of heroin and opioid addiction is something that's significant. It's very real, and it's hitting us here locally in our communities here, but across the state. We have from the legislature here with us, who I will introduce, is Senator Funke, Rich Funke from the Rochester area, second to my right. Senator George Amador from the Schenectady region of New York. Senator Terrence Murphy from Westchester. Senator Rob Ort from Niagara. And we have Assemblyman Phil Palmisano, who represents us here in Yates and Steuben, Seneca, and Schuyler counties. So, you know, in the interest of time, we're going to keep it short on introductions. As I said, these are critically important issues that we're dealing with. We want to make sure we get input from the variety of factors. We know that communities across the state and across the country are grappling with this crisis of heroin. We've seen all too many tragedies in our hometowns and read about it in the news all the time. It seems to be getting worse and worse, and there are issues that we need to address and do a better job of, from prevention to treatment to law enforcement and the crime aspects of this as well. But it's got to be a community-wide based approach from our local leaders, local community organizations, our local governments, our school districts, law enforcement and district attorneys that are here, the court system, right up to our state government and our federal government, because this is a nationwide crisis that we are dealing with. So I thank you all for showing your interest in coming out here to hopefully be able to share some of your experiences with us, and to learn some things about what we're doing, because we're here to learn ideas on how and what we should be doing in Albany moving forward. We're in the budget process right now in Albany, and in the budget proposal that's out there now, I think it's about $140 million that's proposed in the budget for heroin and opioid addiction categories. But that's only about a $6 million increase from last year's budget in that, and we're looking at ways on how we can further bolster our community services to provide for treatment and prevention of this real public health issue that we have in the individuals that are addicted. And we recognize it as a public health issue as well as a crime issue, and it needs to be approached on all those levels for us to be effective and everyone to be involved. So I thank you again for coming out. We're going to start out with did you guys want to do any opening remarks? Or? Yeah. We are going to start with our first panel, which is a group of district attorneys and sheriffs, law enforcement from Yates County here, from Schuyler County and Chemung County. We have Joe Fazzari, the Schuyler County District Attorney, Ron Spike, the Yates County Sheriff, Bill Yesman, the Schuyler County Sheriff, Jason Cook, Assistant DA, former DA here in Yates County, is an assistant in Chemung County now, representing the Chemung County DA's office, Investigator Thomas Dunham from the Penn Village Police Department, and our Yates County District Attorney here with us, Valerie Gardner. I thank you all for being with us here today. I don't know if, Valerie, you would like to start it out on being the hometown DA here?
Sure, I'd love to. Thank you very much. Senators, Assemblymen, all of our guests here, but particularly our community members here in Yates County who are facing a terrible situation with the heroin epidemic that is sweeping across our county. I want to welcome you especially and say thank you for taking time out to come out tonight. So thank you very, very much. So in terms of, we all, I think, are familiar with the national statistics and the statewide statistics that are shocking. This epidemic has taken us literally by storm, and we're doing the best we can here in Yates County to try and combat that and address the significant issues with opiate addiction, and specifically the influx of heroin that we've had here in Yates County. And my request tonight to our state legislators here is that please, we are a small county, we need your help in committing the financial resources for us to address this problem. It is widespread, and one thing about heroin addiction is that, or any addiction, but specifically heroin addiction, as it plays out here, it does not know our county boundary. And so as a result, we have individuals here who are using, who are addicted. They're traveling outside of Yates County for their supply of heroin. And our law enforcement agencies have jurisdictions that they have to abide by. So I would ask the state to please commit significant resources to the New York State Police, to interagency cooperation, so that we can address this problem beyond the boundaries that impact us so greatly here locally, please. In addition, I think we all can appreciate that by the time an addict gets to us, we're at the end of the pipeline here. And there's already been significant harm, not only to the addict and their families, but also victims involved in crime. And so when we look at this, I think that we really have to appreciate that every strategy to attack this problem must be employed. And the most important is prevention, education, to keep people out of the criminal justice system. And that benefits all of us. But in order for that to happen, we must have treatment available so that the option when an addict decides that they want to get help, that they have the ability to seek treatment. Currently, you have some choices before you in terms of dealing with the insurance industry and the historic regulations that the insurance companies are allowed to force addicts to fail 2-3 times before they have access to inpatient treatment. So I would ask that the legislature insist that the insurance companies take notice that heroin is unlike other addictions, that outpatient treatment is just not as effective as significant inpatient treatment, and make those resources available. I know that the proposed budget includes approximately 30 beds to be located in the upstate area, and I would just say that while it is a start, it is woefully insufficient, and I hope that you will all advocate strongly for more beds to be available for our citizens who are battling this addiction. And I just would note to you that in the absence of doing that, the very serious consequence is that the beds that will end up being available for these folks are the beds in our county jail. And that is not something that we want to see. I think the sheriff can tell you that we have had just a tremendous increase in population because of this. And so we need to remember that the consequences are widespread for all of us here. In addition, I would also ask that the alternatives to heroin that some turn to, if they happen to be on probation supervision or in a program where they are trying to address getting well and fighting their addiction, that synthetic drugs absolutely must be addressed within our legislature so that our penal law is not defining drugs and controlled substances that are illegal by the polymers that can so easily be changed. And so please, if you could support that, that would be a tremendous help to law enforcement.
Hillary, and we, as we spoke about this yesterday in front of the Yates legislature, we have passed that in prior years in the state senate, and we have passed it this year already. We'll put the pressure on our assemblyman here, Phil Palmisano, to get that through the assembly, which he's very supportive of. Don't get me wrong. I'm just teasing him. But our battle there with any time of these changes in criminal penalties, our struggle is to get it through the state assembly. But we're there with you on that.
Okay, so go, Phil. So lastly, I just want to give you an idea of how this has impacted us locally in Yates County for our criminal justice system. Our county court, Judge Falvey, who serves us in county court, hears felonies, and surprisingly, Yates County has been pretty consistent over the last 17 years as I look back at the statistics in terms of how many felonies get filed. We are over 20% higher as of last year, directly related to the heroin epidemic. And with regard, if you can imagine, so we had 91 either Superior Court informations or indictments filed last year alone. That is a tremendous amount for Yates County. And there are victims attached to every single one of those cases. And that is felonies only. If you add in the misdemeanors that are handled in local courts, the possession cases, it's just a tremendous amount of resources that we're putting into the criminal justice system instead of prevention. And so I'm hoping that everybody can support that effort through the Yates Substance Abuse Coalition and however you can in talking to your families and neighbors. With regard to our numbers, a total of 98 cases over the last 2 years. The highest charge has been a drug charge. So we're not talking, that's not the only cases that involve drug involvement. There are lots of larcenies and other things that the impetus for the crime is drugs, but I'm talking about the charge is a drug charge. And out of those 98 cases, 32 are felony cases. We do have a 100% conviction rate here in Yates County on all of those cases. And so we're doing what we can through the programs that we have in the criminal justice system, and I hope that you'll continue your support for that and also continue to ask our representatives to help with the budgetary constraints as well. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, District Attorney Gardner. Now I'll turn to our sheriffs, Sheriff Spike, Sheriff Gessman. If you could give us an overview of your perspective on this and where you think we at the state, at the legislative level, may be able to offer assistance in your efforts.
Sure.
And kind of the trends, obviously, that you're seeing here locally.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you, Senator, for having this hearing, and thank you, committee members, for being here and everyone else. When this community was first forming a coalition, I put together some slides at the Penn Academy to speak, and I said at the time that heroin and opiate abuse was an epidemic, and I stand by that label today. That's what it is. And I never thought at the time, a few years ago, I'd be standing in a school in this community and talking about heroin. It just wasn't something we talked about. So it's been quite a challenge for public safety, public health, for the criminal justice system, public education, and all the treatment entities that are around. We've had a dozen deaths over the last few years, 10 from heroin, 1 from pills, and 1 from an addict who was so needing they chewed on a fentanyl patch and killed themselves. The oldest was a 45-year-old woman who started out taking OxyContin and then went to heroin because it was available and affordable. Sadly, we also had the life of a 17-year-old girl who once tried it for fun and was soon addicted. For this county, perhaps to some, a dozen deaths may not seem high, but in this close community, it is huge to us. It is huge. And it's just a terrible problem because in some areas of this country, the deaths by heroin are exceeding the deaths by car crashes, which normally is the #1 killer of our young people. I and members of my office have interacted with families and those addicted and those who have overdosed. On the majority of those cases of overdoses, the Good Samaritan laws have been around, and thus we don't get into the criminal justice systems or make an arrest because of that. They seem to apply more often than not. But we have dealt with many moms and dads who don't know what to do. They're kind of behind closed doors in some way and perplexed on seeing their son or their daughter transform into an addict. And it's just terrible because even those that find treatment have to travel 50 miles to get that treatment. And so that in itself is yet another problem. Those that are abusing it just cannot help themselves. It is such a powerful drug, such a powerful craving. It cares less whether you're young or old, rich or poor. It matters not to that. Many in their 20s are stealing from their parents, they're stealing from their grandparents, or they go to their neighbor's house and steal property, shoplift, forge checks, that type of thing. Our investigators have spent considerable time in the city of Rochester at pawn shops where individuals take this property to get the cash to buy the drugs. All drug possession cases in the last 4 years have risen 120% for our agency. And felony drug cases for our agency in the last 4 years have risen 150%. We have no dedicated drug unit in this county, and a majority of the county's investigators' time involves drug investigations. I recently deputized the local Penn police investigator, who's here at this table, who works very hard in this area. As we all work together very much, I wanted him covered because he was outside of his jurisdiction and spending a lot of time in the county with our people working on cases related to the village of Penn. I said to him, Tom, how much time are you spending on drugs? 80% of his time. 1 year ago, after 4 months of investigation, we were able to take down, with the Penn police and our agency, took down a guy who was selling drugs in Dundee and then moved to Penn. He was selling heroin, cocaine, oxycodone, and Suboxone. He ended up getting 12 years in prison. Once again, the time involved with these cases is huge. To make these drug arrests, to be involved with informants and doing surveillance is huge. Another statistic that I think is very relevant for everyone to understand, I looked at our statistics in the last 5 years for making arrests for driving while impaired by use of drugs. Driving when under the influence of drugs. In the last 5 years, they've increased by 300% in this county. And we have put up billboards. We have trained a deputy as a drug recognition expert. They call him a DRE. There's only about 220 of them in the whole state of New York. And they're very important. And he's a big asset to local police deputies and the troopers. In 2011, I found myself on the national news when we had a tragic fatal traffic accident on a county road where we had several Amish were killed in a van because of a driver who was under the influence of cocaine, who struck them and took all their lives, convicted of homicide. The men and women who perform public safety in Yates County, whether they be county or the local police, don't get enough recognition for all the good work that they are doing. And we have really been touched by this epidemic. Our 911 communications center deals with overdose cases. It ties up a dispatcher doing pre-arrival instructions when they're sending EMS and what have you. Our patrol deputies have to respond to these increased calls of stolen property, and they've all been trained in the use of Narcan in every patrol car and have saved some lives. We've put receptacles in our public safety building and other satellite offices where people can bring in drugs and drop them off, no longer being used. And we've put up a crime tip hotline, and I'm trying to get an app on a smartphone, and I'm very close to having that done. Our canine units have increased calls for searches of property to detect drugs. We had to get a special license from New York State, and now I'm working on a license from the DEA to actually hold the drugs in our possession so that drug dogs can be trained on finding those drugs. So we're working on that right now. Our youth officer is assigned to the Dundee School and is involved with DARE, Drug Abuse Resistant Education for 5th graders. And don't I wish I had the resources to continue to do that in the 8th grade and again in the 11th grade, because it's through repetition, I feel, that we can optimize our education efforts of our kids. So I thank the Yates County Schools for all they are doing and have done for public health education. Our criminal investigators are handling informants, doing surveillance, handling evidence, and with handling evidence, we are very aware of the fentanyl issue. These dealers are cutting heroin with fentanyl, and in some cases, recently, up in the Erie County area, they had 23 deaths in 11 days where it was pure fentanyl. They're seeing this down in the Binghamton area and also other areas of the state. And so we're constantly doing training on safety so that when we're handling this drug evidence, we don't get hurt ourselves. The other thing we're seeing more of, which I think is important for you to know, is we're seeing more synthetic marijuana starting to appear on the scene. So I think that's important. Last but not least is our county jail. We have several addicts in our jail on a regular basis. We've seen withdrawal. We have seen infections due to needle use. In the last year, we had more inmates hospitalized than ever before, and a lot of that was due to drugs. And we often have to guard them at our local hospital. Right now, I've got officers guarding an individual who was in our jail for drugs up at the local hospital. And we have to do that 24/7. We've had to do guard duty at Strong Memorial Hospital, travel up there and back with guards to guard these individuals at the hospital. Puts a strain on jail resources and overtime. We have FLACRA coming into our jail on a regular basis for substance abuse and alcohol counseling. And we are seeing a lot of attempts to smuggle contraband into the jail through visitation and other methods, especially Suboxone, which comes in the strips. We're seeing more and more of that. We even had a drug court participant who knew she was going to get sanctioned in drug court by the judge and put in jail, hide heroin inside her body, and then we caught her snorting heroin in her jail cell, and that type of thing. So we continue to see increases in the number of females that are involved in drugs, kind of disproportionate to those of the males, especially in our jail. And so I think it's important to know that we had as many as 21 females in our jail last August. I only have 4 cells in my jail for females, okay? We had 21 in jail. And a few weeks ago, we had an inmate give birth, and she now has her baby in her jail cell in my jail. And we've had to provide a nursery, and providing that whole setting, keeping her separated and that child separated, because under the law she has a right to have that baby with her in the jail and she wants it. Keeping that separated from everybody else that's in that jail and the people that she shouldn't be around has been very challenging for us. So finally, our jail medical staff and our jail physician, we are commencing a plan for a program to introduce a drug in our jail called Vivitrol for addicts who want to recover and who will go to counseling. We need to rethink alcohol and opioid dependence for those in the criminal justice system. Vivitrol is FDA approved. It's non-addictive, and contrary to other drug treatments, it is an opioid blocker and an antagonist, and a single shot will last 28 days. It appears to me that Vivitrol, together with counseling for 6 months, may be the best chance for detoxification and reduce relapses. Relapses have taken many of our local addicts to their death and rehospitalization. Let me conclude and say this. Law enforcement will continue to do our part as best we can with the manpower and resources we have. I've been asked, could we do more? The answer is yes, I could do more with added resources, but those appear to be limited. County budgets are already strained to stay under the tax cap. I have looked for grant opportunities, and those available at this time do not address drug investigation or interdiction. So grants similar to the federal burn grants of yesteryear would be something that would be very accepted so that we could have our own dedicated drug unit. Working with the village police, and together we will make an impact. Law enforcement has a very important role to play in this multifaceted community crime and health problem. The sellers of heroin belong in jail. Those addicted do not belong in jail. They need affordable treatment. I want to thank our local county substance abuse coalition for all their volunteers and all their advocacy and the partnership of education and awareness efforts. I thank this committee for allowing me to make a few remarks, and thank you for coming to Penn.
Thank you, Sheriff Spike. Sheriff Yesman from Schuyler County, any comments to add?
Yeah, thank you, and thank you for coming out tonight. I'd like to say that Schuyler County is different from Yates County. We're very similar in size. We're also very similar in the problems we're seeing. I've had this conversation with Sheriff Spike in the past. We're trying to share information now, but we just don't have the resources, being small counties, small agencies, to dedicate full-time drug investigators to this issue. In over 30 years with the Sheriff's Office, I've never seen a drug come in and take hold of the community like heroin has. We've seen cocaine come in. We've seen the marijuana. We're still dealing with methamphetamine in Schuyler County. But heroin is taking hold in the younger population in our counties. It's destroying them. We have made a couple of saves with Narcan, only to arrest the people the next day for possession again because they need this drug. The jail situation, I do not have any female cells in Schuyler County. We're the second smallest jail in the state. I currently have 6 females boarded out to Chemung County, all on drug-related charges, every one of them. Some of them for larcenies because they had to steal to get money to get the drugs, but they're all in on drug-related offenses. And that's an expense that we're not prepared for, and it just keeps getting worse and worse. When Sheriff Spike told me he had 21 females in jail last summer, I thought, what's going on up there? You know, we weren't seeing the heroin down in Schuyler County. We were kind of isolated from it for a while. And we said, geez, we're lucky. You know, it's up in Yates County. It's over in Tompkins County. It's down in Chemung County. We have it. We saw a lot of our people overdosing in other counties. Now they're overdosing at home in our county. And we have to take steps to be able to fight this. Again, counseling, prevention is a great thing, but right now people come to us as the local law enforcement, as their elected law enforcement officials in the counties, and want our help. And we're trying to do what we can. Again, my investigators work on this basically in it used to be their spare time. Now it's taking over their job. They spend the majority of their time. Every morning we sit in our criminal investigations division and talk about drugs. We have known locations in our county where we're making our presence very well known in the area. These people know we're out there, and we're trying to put enough pressure on them to maybe move on, but that's not solving the problem. Even if we move our dealers out, others are going to move in and take over, or they're going to go into the surrounding area and buy their drugs there. It's not going to be an easy fix. Like the sheriff said, this is an epidemic, and I totally agree. A year ago, I would have said maybe not. But the way this has moved in and taken hold, it's just a terrible thing that we have to do something about. And as a law enforcement leader, this is one of those things that our hands are tied. Because, again, budget-wise, there's no money there. They reduce our budgets all the time. We need some type of prolonged funding to at least have task forces, maybe between counties. You know, we're seeing similar movement between Yates County and Schuyler County at this time. And we're working with the sheriff. Investigator from Penn here was just down in our office a couple weeks ago working a case with us. And this is what we're going to have to do is team together. But agencies aren't going to, I know the police department in Penn, he's working most of the time out of the village, and they're not going to be able to financially keep that going. So we need to find a way to fund these investigations and the investigators that are handling these investigations. Thank you.
Thank you, Sheriff. Investigator Dunham, from your perspective as the drug investigator in Yates County, I take it, wearing many hats, and I thank the Penn Village Police Department for allowing you to do that. If you could give us your perspective on this.